Can cannabis help with menopause symptoms? It's not talked about much, but essential oils can help many women in midlife, in particular CBD from the marijuana plant. Menopause can be a challenging time for so many women, especially when you consider symptoms such as hot flushes, mood swings, and insomnia. But essential oils have caught my attention, and in particular CBD, a naturally occurring compound from the hemp plant. There's a lot to discover about its benefits, all of which my guest today is about to shed some light on, specifically how CBD essential oils and other plant oils can help with menopausal symptoms. So, whether you're currently going through menopause or know someone who is, this episode is for you. My guest today is Colleen Quinn, an internationally celebrated clinical aromatherapist, cosmetic chemist, researcher, and educator. She's also the founder of LabAroma and LabFem. Today we're going to discuss aromatherapy and how essential oils and plants, especially CBD, can help with menopause symptoms so that women thrive during midlife and beyond. Hello Colleen, welcome to Unpause the Menopause. It's absolutely awesome to see you again.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited about today's chat. I know it's going to be great. I've spoken to Colleen before, just informally on a couple of things, and you are an absolute fountain of knowledge. So this is going to be great today. I'm so excited. As an expert and a specialist in alternative botanical health, I would love to know what your morning routine looks like.
It's a great question. My morning routine is a bit extreme. So I'm celiac, so it kind of has to be a bit extreme. My job is to maintain my immune system. So I start my morning with, the first thing I do is I meditate every morning. And it's took, which always sounds very impressive, but it's took about 10 years to make that consistent. So let's wrap context around that. It's not like I just started it. But it's consistent now, which is amazing and a complete game changer. So I do that every morning for 40 minutes. And then I start with probiotics, water and celery juice. So lots of fluids. And then when I'm being super good, there's a run, but not always. Toulouse is cold and windy at the minute, so it's a bit hard to do it in the morning. And then I intermittent fasted for years. I don't do it anymore, but I did for years. But now I'll always have a light breakfast, and then my first coffee will have CBD in it. So I'm a celiac, and I've only been at 4 years, and my aim is to reverse it, which sounds very ambitious, but I work with a brilliant nutritional coach, and actually we're getting there. Touch wood, it's getting there. And one of the big things is to detox. So celery juice is amazing, not only for the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits, but it is an amazing detoxer for the liver. So it's brilliant, yes, if you've had one too many glasses of wine the night before and all of those things. But my aim is to do it every single day so that my liver is optimized every day. So then when I do decide at the weekend to have a glass or two of red wine, my liver can handle it much better.
And do you feel the difference?
Yeah, and I'm only doing it about 6 months, I would say. So the rest of that routine is years long. The celery juice is only 6 months. And actually, I seen it on Rio Ferdinand's wife, Kate Ferdinand. I follow her on Instagram, and she was a big advocate of it. And I thought that makes so much sense. And I notice a massive difference, mostly in my skin and in my ability to recover if I do have a drink.
The skin and recovery, that's good. Good top tips. And also I think helps living, like you said, near a market in Toulouse, because that all sounds very glamorous. But Colleen, I'm really love to know about your own journey and how you've got to where you are today. You're a luxury certified organic aromatherapy brand, and you launched, I think, about 12 years ago. That eventually became LabAroma. Can you tell us a bit about that and what LabAroma is, please?
Yes. So when I was 27, so I'm 39 now, nearly 40. When I was 27, I decided to build a brand. So I had been a therapist for about 8 years at that point. And it was great. But most of my clients were not just coming for treatments, but they wanted their products to take home. So I was making body oils, skincare, suppositories, lots of different things to deal with different situations, whether it was like a skin condition or insomnia or stress or depression, didn't matter. I was leaning into aromatherapy for all of those things. And it was wonderful, but I was spending more time in the lab producing than I was actually seeing clients in the treatment room. And I thought this has to be streamlined. And I was always a massive fan of two things, Space NK and Aromatherapy Associates. I always greatly admired Nikki Kennard's ability to identify really smart, interesting brands. And I wanted to be one of them. So we launched Luciana Bella way back. So that was 2012, I think, 2011, 2012. And while I was in the lab for a year, formulating Luciana Bella and making this luxury organic certified bath and body brand, it was slow. It's a slow process. Doing the chemistry of plants is complicated and slow and not very sexy. And I needed it to be more efficient. So I built a very crude piece of software called what we called LabAroma at the time. But the first version needed code to actually make it work. So it was insanely crude. But it made me get to market quicker. And it also meant that when you make products, they have to go through a cosmetic compliance process. And if you fail a cosmetic compliance test, you just get a failed certificate. They don't explain what you've done wrong. They don't advise you on how to fix it. And I didn't have the money or the time to fail certificates and have to go back to the drawing board. And the software made me never fail a certificate and be very efficient and make very effective products because they were based on chemistry. So I'd never planned LabAroma to be an actual tool for the world, never mind a business. But about 2 years later, my aromatherapy bubble, like my core associates and friends, knew about the software and knew that I had made this thing that was really cool and efficient. So we wrapped a bit of money around it and turned it into a tool that we were busy running Luciana Bella, and we were in Space NK and we were in Harvey Nicks. So we'd hit the ground running pretty quick. So there was no way we were going to run a software business. But we built it, put it on a cloud, and I literally told my community, that's there. If you want to sign up to it, you can. And then cut to 2016. Luciana Bella was still going strong, but I was no longer an aromatherapist. I was now a businesswoman, and I was in London and I was selling products, and it was great and very exciting and very interesting, but I hadn't touched a plant in about 3 years. So we decided in 2016 to swap, to focus on LabAroma and let Luciana Bella tick along and see, so completely reverse the two businesses around and see what would happen. And within 6 months, we realized very quickly that LabAroma had much more potential than Luciana Bella would ever have. So TK Maxx bought the remaining stock of Luciana Bella, and I closed it down a year later, and we focused on LabAroma. It's basically a formulation tool used by anyone who's interested in plants. So anyone, even at home, who has no intention of ever being an aromatherapist but wants to blend 3 oils for concentration, they can go into the software and it'll tell them what to do. It'll tell them how to do it. But then for aromatherapists and chemists, it does their complicated mathematical formulations. So it's very cool and useful. And then we also built an education leg in 2020. And education was all about trying to make the science of plants and the therapeutics of plants accessible to everyone. And we specialize in cannabis and CBD. We teach aromatherapy courses as well, but we specialize in cannabis and CBD.
So as an expert in aromatherapy, can you maybe explain to somebody what it is and how it works?
I think for a lot of people, they think, and it's not untrue, but they think aromatherapy is a nice relaxation massage with a few smelly oils. And to an extent that, especially in the UK, that's what aromatherapy was for a very long time. But it's so much more than that. So our aromatherapy is the use of essential oils, however you want to use them, whether you want to use them in massage, for distillation, for diffusion, or you want to use them for your skincare or medicine, whatever. It's the use of essential oils. Now, an essential oil is a very, very concentrated oil that is extracted, or what we say distilled from a plant. And that tiny 10 ml bottle is full of phytochemicals, which are plant-based chemicals or good chemicals, and they are profoundly therapeutic. And every essential oil, every plant will give you a different essential oil, and every essential oil will have a very different therapeutic effect. Now, within reason, your citruses, so think of like orange, bergamot, lime, they'll have a lot of similar chemistry, so that they'll be pretty uplifting, they'll be pretty stimulating, motivational. Whereas when you think of pines, so conifers, so things like pine, balsam copia, those big conifer trees, they tend to be very grounding. Now, there's generalizations, but within the world of plants, there is very common threads of therapeutic benefits from different groups, depending on the plant and the type of plant they're taken from.
So if we look, for example, at some of the most common menopause or perimenopausal symptoms, like difficult to sleep, I'm quite stressed, I'm bloated, I've maybe got hot flushes. Are there specific essential oils or plants that you would recommend to women going through those?
Try to do when we think about aromatherapy or plants and the menopause or perimenopause is to identify one essential oil per condition. No, it's not typically how I work, because when you ask me, I think about 20 oils. But you're never going to remember 20 oils, and there's nothing more patronizing than seeking help and, being told something and you can't hold on to one thing. So I'd rather give you one solution and you hold on to that solution. You'll come back in the future and say, I need another solution. That's fine. But my one solutions are for concentration or that afternoon dip whenever you just can't get your motivation back up, but you just need to finish work and you only 2 or 3 hours left, but you can't keep your mind focused, and all of a sudden you feel like you've gained ADHD in the afternoon and you just cannot stay there. Rosemary essential oil is your go-to in that situation.
I'm so happy you said that, because for a number of reasons, but also on a personal level. When my kids are doing exams, I always buy rosemary plants and have them all around the house. And I've just done it for years. I don't know, I must have read it years and years ago, but you can just smell it and it just sort of seems to help them retain the information as well.
And the other thing is, and this is a whole other conversation, but there's massive science behind scent and memory and the connection between scent and memory. So your kids, and so I love that you do this with our exams, your kids will associate this smell of rosemary as concentration and focus. So every time they will smell it going forward, it'll keep them focused, and it brings it's called your olfactory system and your limbic brain. And your limbic brain and your olfactory system work together to store those memories. Now, it's why if you have a very positive experience with your mom as a child and you smell the perfume she used to wear it just warms your heart. Maybe you have this, romantic memory of your dad mowing the lawn in the summer. The smell of cut grass will always bring you back there. That's not a coincidence. That's your limbic brain. Essential oils will do that in terms of scent as well.
Perfect. Now we've gone off on a tangent, and that is entirely my fault. So let's come back to some of the symptoms. So you've talked about concentration and memory. Sleep, you've mentioned lavender.
Lavender and petitgreen. So, and I will give you two for this because not a lot of people like lavender. And the reason a lot of people don't like lavender is they're used to synthetic lavender. So they associate lavender as that, and it's not. Pure lavender smells very different. Not very different, but it's considerably different. So if lavender is an option, some people would just say no, they won't even try it.
I always used to associate it with aging as well. I guess maybe our grannies always had it in their talcum powders and that kind of stuff. So you have that kind of slight hesitance about using it. But yeah, so what was the other one you mentioned?
Petitgreen. Petitgreen's beautiful. And there's an amazing study done on petitgreen for stress and sleep. So if your sleep is also being affected because of stress, not just hormonal, then petitgreen's an absolute go-to. So my advice would be, if you can do lavender, do lavender. But if your sleep is not just hormonal, you sleep problems due to hormones and hormonal changes, and it's associated with stress as well, which most of us is at that time in our life, then petitgreen's your go-to. It'll tackle both.
Perfect. Now, CBD, let's talk about this. A lot of people are slightly hesitant about it. We sort of associate with cannabis with being a bit naughty or maybe not doing the right thing, but how is CBD fundamentally different from cannabis?
So CBD is a great question. So CBD is one part of the cannabis plant. So if you think of a Sunday roast and you've got your potatoes, your meat, your gravy, your Yorkshire pudding, you've all these things that you need in order to make up a Sunday roast. It's not a Sunday roast if there's no Yorkshire puddings, okay? CBD is the Yorkshire pudding. It is just one part of that plant. There's so many other parts of the plant, but one of the compounds, one of the most profound compounds, is CBD. So it's not the whole plant, it is just one compound. And a couple of reasons people be afraid of it or skeptical of it is they worry they'll get high. So CBD is not psychoactive. You cannot get high. There is an argument that it has the ability to impair to an extent, but no more than caffeine. We take a coffee and it'll stimulate us. You take CBD and it'll either relax you or make you more concentrated. Everyone's different. So yes, it works on your brain, but you're not going to be high. You're not going to be impaired. It's not going to affect your ability to function. If anything, it'll make you function at a much more effective and healthy rate and way. So I think that's one thing. The second thing that people are scared of is is it legal? Which is a big question. Now, cannabis is not legal in a lot of the world. CBD is legal in a lot of the world. We just need to be careful with CBD that we're actually buying CBD and we're not accidentally buying something like hemp seed oil, which we've all used for decades and decades. Hemp seed oil is a carrier oil. You use it to make salads. It's like olive oil. It's a brilliant oil. It's fantastic. It doesn't have any cannabinoids in it. CBD is a cannabinoid. So just be careful that, and people will say, but hemp seed oil is so expensive. It has got expensive because cannabis and CBD is now in demand. So the hemp carrier oil has got expensive as well. So it's important to know, and the best way to know is if you're buying CBD, it'll have to have two things. It can say CBD oil, doesn't mean anything. It needs to give you a percentage of CBD or a weight. So it needs to either say something like 1% CBD oil or 100 megs of CBD or 1000 megs of CBD. And megs is the metric you want. If your CBD oil you're buying does not give you the actual amount of CBD in it, chances are it's not CBD.
And what kind of level would you recommend then would be needed for women our age?
I like a 10% dose. And 1 to 10%. So, for example, you typically will buy a 30 ml bottle. You want that 30 ml bottle to have anything between 300 megs to 3000 megs. The higher, the better.
It's really hard to know what you're buying unless you speak to an expert like you. And we also know, we both work in the industry, and there's a lot of things out there that are not good products. There needs to be an element of knowing what you're buying. And
so if you find that person you trust or the brand you trust, then life is much, much easier. And then that's it. You know you're getting good CBD and you trust them. And also if they diversify and bring out different products, maybe they bring out a sleep-specific CBD oil, then you know that you've got other options with them and you can trust them.
So now we know what to trust and what level of concentration to buy. What are the benefits of taking CBD particularly?
And one of two things will happen with CBD. You will either really benefit from it from a sleep point of view. And one of the reasons that it's so helpful for sleep or stress, and I'm going to put the two in the one category, is that it helps to reduce anxiety. So it's an anti-anxiety. And whether we want to believe it or we think we're anxious, a lot of us live on a certain level of anxiety that we have normalized. Okay, especially women, especially we're going through hormonal shifts and imbalances. So CBD helps to bring that down. And I think it's really, really helpful, especially towards not necessarily just before bed, but in the evening when dinner is done and you're just starting to unwind for the evening. It takes about 20 to 40 minutes to kick in. Everyone's different. So taking it just before bed used to be the cool thing to do. I recommend you take it for about an hour and a half before bed and let it help you get into your bedtime routine. Like we don't do that either as adults, and we certainly don't do it as women. Kids have this beautiful bedtime routine that winds them down going to bed. No technology, sometimes a bath, reading books, and then bed. We don't do that. We run and run and run and run and then jump into bed and expect our bodies and minds to just go to sleep. It's not going to happen. CBD helps us get into that preparation mode for bed, and that helps us sleep better. So that's one of the things.
So it's almost at the time that some people would be having their glass of wine. So it's exchanging your glass of wine for some CBD.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we work with a brilliant nutritionist, Sarah, on our in Lab Femme. She always gives the best piece of advice. She says, if you're agonizing over whether to have the glass of wine or not, have the glass of wine, because you're actually torturing yourself about not having the glass of wine.
She sounds like she might be a friend of mine. Yeah.
Which I think is brilliant advice. But she says, then think about it the next time and have a plan. Tonight, Tuesday night, I'm not going to have wine. Like, let's say you're in the pattern of having a glass of wine every night with dinner, which is very European. You can decide, actually, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not going to, or just on Tuesdays, I'm not going to. And when you make the decision to not have it, then the decision's made. You just let it go. You don't agonize over it all evening. You don't torture yourself and eventually have it anyway, and then resent having it. If you're going to have it and enjoy it. But ideally, if you can replace it with your CBD or eventually get into the habit of replacing it with your CBD, even if it's just midweek, then do that.
Could you take it with the glass of wine, or is it definitely an alternative?
You can take it with the glass of wine, but for me, it's an alternative. I find it much more effective. So me personally, if I have a glass of wine, I forgo my CBD, and that's a deal breaker for me. So for me, it doesn't necessarily help me sleep, but it helps me unwind. So, I've never had sleep issues, touch wood. So I've never needed it for sleep. But for me, it's one or the other. It makes no sense to me to put alcohol in and then plant medicine in. Doesn't make any sense. It's like going for a workout and then having a chippy on the way home.
Well, we're the same with Solora. If you want to get the full benefit of Solora, don't have your glass of wine in the evening. If you understand that it's not going to work as well for you, have your glass of wine in the evening. But you've got to understand that there's
Exact same.
that's brilliant. I love it. So we've got a lot of information there about CBD. We know it's legal now. We know what we need to be buying, and we know when we need to be taking it. So that's great. I want to also talk to you a bit more about LabAroma. I know we touched on it before, but you've got a really, really successful business there. Can you tell us again how people would find you and where they would go to maybe? Why would they come and see you? Why would they start their journey?
People either come to us for two reasons. And the first one is the software, which we've talked about. And as much as it's very useful for what we call our enthusiasts or our hobbyists, it's a software tool that teaches you the chemistry of the plants. So you need to be very interested in your plants to fall madly in love with the software. Whereas for aromatherapists and herbalists and educators, it's a lifeline. Like, it's an essential lifeline for them. Our education side of the business is called Lab Education. It's all part of LabAroma. And it's very different in that it is for anyone. And we teach what we call pre-grad or post-grad education. So for example, one of our courses is called Lab CBD. And it teaches you what is CBD, how do I use it, and how do I use it for skincare. And in there I have 20 skincare recipes. Skincare you can make at home. So I use things like berries and bananas and avocado and coffee grounds, like things, practical things. Like the whole point of Lab CBD is to make CBD and skincare something you can do in the kitchen. And I'm a massive fan of no waste. All of that kind of thing is in Lab CBD. And then Lab Femme is our other big course for women. And the big thing that we learned over the years was that there was no talk of what I call the Jane Fonda years. There was no talk of post-menopause. And I call it the Jane Fonda years because I want to be Jane Fonda. I want to approach it like that. And there was no talk of that. It was all about, and I respect this, the grief and the loss and the change. I understand that. But what's on the other side of that? We all stopped the conversation at menopause. And I thought that there was a whole other conversation that had to be had on the other side of that. So we said we would create a program called LabFem that would do three things. The first thing would be it would educate us on our hormones. That was a big thing. I would say something simple like, the reason you've no libido is your estrogen levels are lower. That also stimulates your cortisol levels, so then you feel stressed, and then physically you don't have a libido because you don't have natural hydration when you've low estrogen. And I would say this matter of factly, and our community would say, "What are you talking about? I'm 60 and I didn't know any of this." So education was massive, and I always say that knowledge is power, and I felt like we weren't empowering anyone because they didn't know this. So that was really important. And then plant-based solutions was our next aim. We wanted to give you essential oil and herbal solutions. Now that developed into life coaching solutions and practices and exercises, as well as nutritional exercises and recipes and yoga and meditation. So we put a whole toolkit together to help you no matter what journey you were on or where you were in that journey. And then the third aim was to paint a bright picture of what happens post-menopause. And a big part of that was embodiment and sexual embodiment. Because a lot of the conversation I was hearing was, oh, well, my libido's gone. My husband's left me for someone younger. I don't blame him. Well, there was lots of different narratives. And I thought, no. Like, if he wants to leave, that's fine. That's a whole different conversation. But your libido and your sex drive and who you identify as a feminine woman, it isn't gone. It's evolved. It's not gone. And I think that's a conversation that I have a lot now, and I think that conversation is really important.
And I really want to pick up on this libido point. What would be your tips for increasing your libido?
Okay, if you want to look at plants, and I always say your libido has to start with self-love. So I don't care what your marital or love life situation is. If there's no self-love and you're not comfortable with your own body as it's evolving, then it's never going to transcend into a bedroom or into a romantic situation. So for me, self-massage and taking time for yourself with essential oils like Palo Santo, rose and geranium are beautiful. So rose is an expensive essential oil. It's the best money you'll ever spend. The rose essential oil opens your heart to love and generally opens your heart to self-love. Yeah. Pink roses and white roses should be in everyone's home. They are always in my bedroom, always. And it's really, but something so simple, like having your roses where you see them every day. So simple. And there's something really empowering about when you buy them for you. It's nice to be gifted them.
Miley Cyrus, she's saying it all the time just now. You've got to listen. Yeah.
She's saying it. She is saying it loud and proud. Palo Santo is really good for helping ground you, but help you to get back to you. Okay, so help you to reconnect with yourself. And I think that's really important. I think the second thing, and this is away from plants, is communication. And we done a masterclass for men last year, and where we wanted to educate, because no, so two things. A lot of the women that go through this don't know the words and don't understand the language. They don't understand what's happening to their body, and they don't have the language to articulate it. So how is their partners, male or female, ever going to be fit to support them? Because they definitely don't have the language and they're not being communicated to. Now, I know you can argue with me and say, I'm going through the menopause. The last thing I want to have to do is explain that to him or her. You kind of do, because they don't know. And communication is massive. But the other big thing, but you need the language to communicate. So it's important that we have that language. And empathy for each other is really important. And then the last thing is stress. And I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but as our feminine hormones start to deplete, naturally and slowly start to deplete, it causes stress, but also our body starts to produce more cortisol. And what that does is make us more stressed. And the last thing you're interested in when you're stressed is sex. It's so far down the priority list. So there's a massive part of me that wants you to rethink about the day-to-day habits you have that stimulate stress. And what can you do in exchange for that? Is it meditation every day? Is it being brave enough to say, I need a timeout every day for 30 minutes and no one is allowed to touch me for 30 minutes or come near me or ask me a question for 30 minutes every day? Whatever that is that brings you back down. I'm a massive fan of breath work and yoga nidra. They're massive tools to help bring down your hormone levels. So we can bring down our stress hormone levels, better chance of getting our libido back up again, or to a place where we're keen. And sorry, the last thing I will say is your libido is a wave. Okay, it's like a breeze. It never just vanishes. It will slowly fade. It never goes away. Think of Jane Fonda. Okay, Jane Fonda still has libido, people. So it's a breeze. It never vanishes. Never. It's always there, but it'll come in little waves. So you'll get a wave of it, and you think, I'm feeling kind of sexy tonight. I might put on nice lingerie. Do that. I don't care if you're going to sit on the sofa. Put on the nice lingerie. When the wave comes, embrace it, because tomorrow you won't feel that breeze as strongly. It comes and goes. And I think when it's there, you have to work with it. And when it's not, have compassion.
I love it. So lots of lovely tips as well to maybe increase our libido, but also just to go with it a little bit as well, which I think is so important. There was one final question I wanted just to touch on with you, because I think it's important for our listeners to understand about the interaction of essential oils with HRT. Is there anything anybody needs to be worried about with essential oils and taking HRT?
So scientifically, we don't know of any problematic interactions. The main reason being, you're never going to take essential oils to an extent where it's going to impede on a pharmaceutical. Now, don't get me wrong, if you were taking for a medication for cholesterol, for example, or you were taking anti-anxiety medication and you were taking copious amounts of lavender, there's going to be a problem, because they are chemicals that are working together. But if you're embracing aromatherapy with, with diffusion or massage, diffusion every day and massage 2 or 3 times a week, you're not going to be exposed to enough essential oils for it to be a problem with HRT.
Perfect. Now, I normally end this, Colleen, with, could you give us one tip if we're women? But I think you've just given us so many today. It's been really, really unbelievable. We've got through so much and I've absolutely loved it. I hope all our listeners have loved it as much as I have. You're just a fountain of knowledge, and it's a pleasure to listen to you and to chat to you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.